In this next test, we're going to simulate the 9900D 2 megawatt UPS's capabilities to operate at plus 15 volts or percent voltage to 552 down to 384 volts. So we're going to move over to the screen and show that we're running on input through the converter to the inverter section to the output at full load at about 1989 kilowatts here on the output of the UPS. And we're going to slowly lower our input voltage down to 384. So right now we're sitting about 480 volts on the input. We'll begin lowering it down. You can see it slowly lowering the input voltage here, 470, 460, still providing charge to the batteries. As the voltage lowers, we lower the charge to the batteries to make sure that we don't exceed 110% of the input current. Once we reach about 440, 450 volts, we begin discharging from the battery to support the load of 2 megawatts. So a 2 megawatt load at 440 volts input, we need to source some power from the batteries so we're not exceeding that 110% input current. Now we're down to 400. Let's close this. You see we're pulling about 200 amps from the battery. 420. 415. Now once we exceed that plus or minus 10%, our bypass voltage is now out of range. So we'll notice that alarm, bypass voltage out of range on the UPS. Because both our bypass and input are the same voltage window. Keep on lowering the voltage, our discharge current goes up. Now in your situation at your facility, more than likely this operation will be a very short-lived event. But since we're doing it over a long controlled period, we can see a lot of the different effects that the UPS is going through, the decisions it's making, how much to pull from the batteries, and how that it needs to support the load. So we're almost down there, about 390, 389. About 384. So we're kind of about to the bottom point here. So you can see at about that voltage, we're pulling 886 amps, almost 900 amps from the battery to support the 2 megawatt load. So 383, 384. So now we're at the bottom. So we're going to begin raising it back up, showing that the UPS can operate just fine down to that voltage. We'll slowly bring it back up and show on the opposite end of the spectrum how we're able to operate at plus 15%. So currently we showed that the UPS can provide full 2 megawatts of output load at minus 20%, or take it up to plus 15%. And as we increase the voltage, you can see the battery current is getting less and less at every step, because we can source more power from the input, less power required from the batteries. Again, still providing a solid about 2 megawatt output load. Once we get back within that plus 10, minus 10% voltage window, the bypass voltage abnormal goes away, because now the UPS can say I can transfer to and from my bypass voltage. We're almost back up to our normal operation. 450. So we're no longer pulling any power from the batteries. No longer discharging. Now you can see we're beginning to exceed 480 volts on the input of the UPS. So our voltage is continuing to go up. So let's look a little closer. We're charging the batteries. As we exceed the voltage of 480 volts and we go to the positive side, we don't need to source anything from the batteries, because we have enough power available from the input. We're not going to see any input current limits because we're actually reducing the amount of current needed from the input to make 2 megawatts. So as we continue to rise up in voltage, our current on the input will go down. So we don't need to source anything to the from the batteries, but we can definitely go back into a charging the batteries mode of the UPS operation. So as we can see here, we're now charging about 81 amps to the battery. Our voltage is still going up, about 500. Let's take a look at the battery current. Again, it's not saying discharge over here, so we absolutely know that we're not discharging from the batteries, but we're pushing current back in. It's about 525, 530, 540, 536, 538, 540, 542. Again, our bypass voltage is out of range. Look at that message. Bypass voltage out of range because we've exceeded those limits. $550. No, $552. So now we're kind of at the very top end of the voltage window into the input to the UPS. We're operating normally. We still have our full 1.989 megawatts of load. I mean, full output of the UPS. Everything's operating normally. Still charging batteries. So everything's good. So really, that concludes the overall operation of the plus 15 and minus 20% input voltage range to the UPS at full load. So we looked at when it pulls from current from the batteries, when it doesn't, and how it operates through that tire sags or swells on your input voltage to your UPS. We really appreciate you watching this video, and if there's any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we can provide more detailed discussion on any of the topics that you saw today.